Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our educational presentation, Navigating Fraud, Scams, and AI Risk. I am Arlinda Clark. I am the chair of the Montgomery County Commission for Women, and I am delighted to present this educational panel to you today. A little bit about the Commission for Women. The Commission for Women serves to advance women's lives throughout the county. And we do that by promoting educational values, by promoting political and economic values for women, by promoting inclusion. And we do that through many of our partners. We do that by advising our Montgomery County Executive, our Montgomery County Council, local, state, and federal agencies on the impacted issues that affect women. So as part of that today, we also partner with many like-minded organizations that have the same goal that we have. And with that, that is the impetus of the program that you are seeing today. Annually, the Montgomery County Commission for Women produces a program called the Women's Legislative Briefing. It is held the last Sunday in January every year. As part of that, we educate the community about legislative initiatives that impact women in the county and have a discussion about it. So it's not only education, it's also a discussion of what we need to do, what we can do, how it affects your lives, and how we navigate through those legislative initiatives. Part of the program is a networking session with our partnering and sponsoring organizations. And that networking session in 2024 was held directly prior to the briefing. And during that time, the sponsoring organizations, as well as the Women's Commission, decided that it was very important to convey education about net frauds, scams, and particularly the effect of AI in that space. We have all noticed, as we've all either become a victim of it or a potential victim, that those scams are on the rise and more prevalent than ever. Last year, the Montgomery County Commission for Women focused on the lack of financial access to women or disproportionate access to finances for women. So this became a part of that because although it not only affects women, it is a huge part of the financial impact on women. So with that, we decided to have a program that would discuss what the scams and frauds are, identifying the frauds, identifying the scam, talk about how AI is now interjected even more in that space, talking about how you're going to prevent yourself from becoming a victim, and if you happen to become a victim, what you need to do to move forward. What is the path forward to undo any harm that may have come from that fraud or scam? So that is the topic of our discussion tonight. I am excited because there's this wealth of information that we have with this esteemed panel. I cannot wait to hear all of the information that's going to be imparted upon us. And we are going to be led by our moderator, Mr. Keith Young. He is going to moderate with us this evening. He is also experienced in this space, so without further ado, because there is a boatload of information, I am now going to pass the baton to Keith. Keith, you can introduce our panel, and let's move on.
Thank you, Arlinda. As Arlinda mentioned, my name is Keith Young. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at Montgomery County, Maryland. That's a long title for basically it means that my team and I protect the county data and systems from cyber attack. So I've been here actually for about 22 years leading the team. So a lot of experience with Montgomery County government, with cyber attacks. And the county, like any organization nowadays, is hit thousands of times a day by cyber attackers. So scams are prevalent no matter who you work for, where you are, whether you're just an individual or an entire company. And so, like Arlinda mentioned, I'm also very excited to moderate this panel of expert speakers tonight. And so to my left is Kelly Davis. She's the program manager investigator at the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office. To her left is Karen Morgan, the assistant project director at AARP. And to her left is Eric Friedman, the director of the Montgomery County Office of Consumer Protection. And so we're going to get right into it. The two things as far as the format tonight, I'm going to ask each of the panel members, when they answer the first question, to just give a short bio about themselves. And also, if there's any questions from the audience, either in person or online, please post them online. And towards the end of the discussion, we'll have an open questions and answer time for the various audience members, again, whether you're here in person or online. And so, starting off with a really great question is, so what scam do you think affects the most prominent target audiences? Like, who do you see as being the most commonly attacked?
I'll jump in. My name's Kelly Davis, like Keith said, and I am the program manager and investigator with our Crimes Against Seniors and Vulnerable Adults Unit with the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office. I think I'm even longer than you with that title. Just a little background about our office. Our unit was started in 2014. We saw, unfortunately, a growing population of older adults and vulnerable adults. And my boss, John McCarthy, the state's attorney, thought that it would be a good decision to start a specialized unit that will look at physical abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. We really wanted to cross-train our attorneys and be able to walk these vulnerable victims through the criminal justice system. So that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years. And I think, my expertise, if you will, is really older adults. So I would say, we usually say anyone over the age of 68. There's a law in Maryland where if you're over 68, you don't have to actually be vulnerable in any other way. It's just based on your age. And we get a ton of financial exploitation cases and scams and referrals. I see a lot, unfortunately, with the online dating and the romance scams. I think that really hits on maybe the isolation and loneliness that we all experience at different points in our lives. You don't have to be older, but a lot of times you are more isolated when you're older. So I would say online scams, and I see a lot of the tech support scams. And I think also with the older adult population, you might not be as familiar with online, the security software. I know I'm not even that great at it, so we see a lot of those as well. And the lotteries are still very prevalent. I can go on, but I would say probably those three I see the most of those.
And I guess I will jump in. My name is Karen Morgan, like Keith said. I'm actually a volunteer with AARP Maryland, so I'm not actually a project. I guess I got a promotion tonight, but I am on the executive council, and I'm one of the lead volunteers for fraud prevention for the AARP Maryland State Office. And in terms of my background, I used to work for the Maryland legislature. I did that for over 30 years. I drafted legislation. I staffed committees. One of the committees I staffed was a work group on identity theft. It was called the Task Force to Study Identity Theft. And I worked on that before identity theft became like the common scourge that it is today. And I also worked on economic crimes. I've written reports about identity theft and how those crimes are prosecuted. So that's my background. And I've volunteered with AARP Maryland for 4 years. So in terms of the scams, the largest target audience, AARP research has indicated that although the mantra is that older people are more likely to be affected by scams than any other group, that's actually not true. Younger people, our research has indicated that people from 20 to 29 actually report being affected by scams more often. The big difference is that those people who are older, particularly after the age of 70, have more resources to lose. So they're more likely, for each incursion, they're more likely to lose significantly more money than someone who might only be 21 or 22. So that's the big difference, but we're all the target. It's just big fat target on everybody. That's what's going on these days.
Good evening. My name is Eric Friedman. I'd like to give a little bio about our office. I'm the director of the Montgomery County Government Office of Consumer Protection. We're very fortunate in Montgomery County to have an active and vibrant consumer protection office. It was established 53 years ago. In fact, it was one of the first things that the county council did when they were created, was to establish a consumer protection office. Only one other county in the state of Maryland is lucky enough to have a local office at this time. And we've got an amazing team, and we greatly appreciate the Commission for Women and Jody and Arlinda for allowing us the opportunity to be here to help provide some information. We do two main things, and that is to educate consumers and merchants as best we can, and to resolve disputes and do investigations. We are a law enforcement agency. We have the authority to issue civil citations, subpoena documents, and we do everything we can to prevent consumers from getting scammed and from taking care of any kind of issues that may come up. My answer to the question is exactly what Karen said, everybody. There is no question about it. There's only one good thing about the crooks, about the scammers. There is one good thing. They do not discriminate. They will scam anyone and everybody, and they're also, in many cases, smarter than we are, because if they weren't smart, they'd have to have regular jobs like the rest of us. So there's no question about it. We are all potential victims, including me and everyone else.
Now I'm scared. So now that me and everyone else online and in the room are absolutely terrified, what are some ways to avoid scams? And we'll pick a specific type of scam so we just don't get general. What's a good way to avoid scams, say, on social media? Going back to the romance scams and other types of frauds and scams that are happening today.
I mean, I think a lot of the scams that we see today, they all have the same elements to it. So it's there's a sense of urgency. They want you to wire money or send gift cards. And there's a sense of secrecy. They don't want you to share the information with anyone. So for online dating, with that particular scam, it's very quick professions of love, and then they want to come see you, but their money's all tied up, and they want you to send money, wire money, and now there's more like cryptocurrency and Bitcoin issues going on. So I would just be very careful with the online dating. I would go to a reputable website, and it gets really tricky. Just don't fall for the quick professions of love, and don't give anyone money, especially if you've never actually met them in person. Start with that.
Definitely echo what Kelly said. And I mean, there are terms for this. There's a playbook. Scammers have developed a playbook with a script on how to entice somebody into a romance scam. And it starts out, very cordial, and it quickly moves to very intense and very intimate and even pornographic. I kid you not. That's what they do. They actually study that. The other thing, and the quick professions of love, we call that love bombing. So that's a total red flag. You know you're fabulous, but how do they know you're fabulous if they've never met you? That's a red flag. And like Kelly said, getting the request or demands for money, and really what's implied is that if you love me, you're going to give me the money. You're not going to let money stand in the way of our amazing relationship where you get to give me money and I get not to ever show up, or actually I get to steal money from you. That's my favorite kind of relationship, said the scammers. So, so that's a huge red flag. And any time that these people want to move onto a private platform to have your so-called intimate discussions, that's a huge red flag. Social media has its issues, but they do have some guardrails to help protect people, and they have some precedent to knock bad actors off of their platforms. The bad actors don't want that, so they want to take you to an encrypted site where the conversations can be private, a site like Telegram, a site like Signal. And they want to make sure that they can isolate you, and they don't want you to tell anybody ever. They just want it to be between you and them.
This is very exciting. I really am lucky. to be number 4 in a list of 3 experts because it gives me time to just repeat what they said and think of something else. But let me just for a second back up because you're hearing all the great information. But just let me back up to give some context to the situation. The world has changed. We all know that. There was a time when our number one fear was pickpockets, picking our pockets or our purses. That's primarily how we would get ripped off. And now we have a whole new world, and we have, unfortunately, the price to pay for all the technology that's out there. The technology is out there now, remarkable things that we can do. We each have in our pocket a device that has more technology in it than anything that's gone to the moon. And it's amazing what we have with these products. There's no limit to what they do, but it is the price we pay for these scams because the crooks are able to use all of these devices to reach us in our homes, by our phones, by our computers, and the people that are doing it don't have to be in our county, in our city, anywhere near us. They are all over the world, literally all over the world, not even in countries. They could be sitting in a boat in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and they can contact us. So you're talking about the question was social media. What the heck is social media? Social media in its most basic form is your ability, our ability to talk to people that we don't know and don't see. That's what we're talking about. And we're going to send money to them electronically in all these different ways. And it's a great service. It's tremendous. It's unbelievable. And it's also very dangerous because that's the flip side of it. So, we can talk about all the different types of scams that there are, but there's no real sense to go too far with that. You don't have to write that down and try and remember it because there's going to be a new one tomorrow. For example, when COVID first popped up, there were scams coming out based on COVID. We didn't even know what COVID was. And the scammers were already coming up with scams. In our office, when COVID first started and no one even knew what the heck it was, we had scams in which people said, send us money, and we will send you a map of all your neighbors that have COVID and went to and did an exam and they know that they have COVID. That's a scam that came up out of nowhere. Every time something happens in the world, the scammers will come up with something else. And people were actually sending money to the scammers to find a map of their neighbors so they could know which neighbor to stay away from. So that is social media. That is what we're going to have. It does great things, but it also has a flip side to it, and we have to be just darn aware of it.
Thank you. Eric, this time I'm actually going to pick on you since you already brought up that you haven't been first in line. So this one will be sent over to you. So how do you know if a scammer's communication, especially over social media, is real or not? How do you know it's legit? What are some things that people could look for?
Well, first of all, we all have to be prepared for almost anything. So I am as well. I brought a little something to my office just in case. I'm going to try my best to answer the question, but just in case I can, and I need a lifeline from the other people here, I'll be ready to go on that. But it's a very good question, and Keith, you are the expert here on the technology. I mean, it's really pretty amazing. The one thing I would say is the word hover, and maybe if you want to add to that too, in terms of when you, any of us, get an email message on our computers or on our phones, we do not know who's on the other end of the computer or the phone. So the thing to do is never to respond, never to click back, especially if it's someone that you don't know. And what you need to do primarily is look to see at the exact address of who is sending that message. And sometimes that gives it away. I mean, we see lots of scams when someone sends an email message and it looks like it's coming from a bank or something. We recognize the colors in there or what a logo, what it looks like. But if you look very carefully, if we all become detectives, which we have to, look at that address that's coming back by hovering over it and you can see who they are. And you may be scammed by the letter S. Sometimes somebody will send something to you and it says the name of an organization that's legitimate, but if you look at the address, it's spelled just wrong because it has an S in there and the word shouldn't have an S. These kinds of things. We have to take the time and effort to look at every email message before you click. In fact, we should never even click on it because you should just call them back knowing the address to be correct before you engage in that, because you really don't know without looking. So to answer the question that I would share is to look to make sure exactly you know what the address is that was sent to you.
And I would definitely echo that. I'm glad I can coast off of Eric now. But one thing that we say at AARP Maryland is, let's look at the source of the communication. Is it something that's coming from out of the blue? Because if somebody or some entity is contacting you out of the blue and asking you for anything, that in and of itself is a red flag. So don't open the email or don't click on any links. And I would say don't verify anything, including the fact that it's not you. These scammers have software programs that randomly dial numbers. If they reach you through a phone call, it's not because they know you. It's because they have a software program randomly dialed your number. And they're hoping that a human will be on the other side of that line, but they don't know. But when you answer, if only to say it's the wrong number, now they know they have a live one. And then they will call back again and again and again. And the other thing is that with regard to email, with regard to text or whatever the venue is, if it's something that requires that you act immediately, that is a red flag. There is nothing that you need to do right away. I don't care what it is they're telling you. You can take 3, 4, 5 minutes to actually try to assess what's going on. Even if you really think your grandchild's been kidnapped by a pack of wolves, you can take 5 minutes to actually assess whether that might happen or not. The other thing I would say is that, contrary to popular opinion, the computer networks that we use today, the powerful computers, don't make things faster. They make things slower. We have to take more time because we do not have our sixth sense. We don't have our intuition to really act on our behalf. We have to take more time to look at where things are coming from, why we're being contacted, and we have to take more time to verify exactly what's going on. Our eyes can't be trusted. Our ears can't be trusted. What we think we're seeing cannot be trusted without additional verification.
No, I think you all covered it. I think the spelling issues and the grammar issues are big. And I don't click on anything. I do this every day, and I still sometimes have to look at things 2 or 3 times. And I also think it's important to reach out to someone. It's okay if you're not sure. Like, I'll talk to my husband and be like, this looks really legitimate. What do you think? And sometimes he'll catch things, and I'll catch things that he wasn't sure about. But yeah, I don't click on anything. And if you're not sure, I always just research it. I take a breath. I take a couple minutes, and I call them directly. Sometimes I've been getting these texts a lot where your package hasn't been delivered. There's an issue with your package with Amazon, UPS. And I'm like, did I order something from Amazon? You know, we all order everything from Amazon now. Like, maybe I did, and let me click on this tracking number. Is it that thing that I ordered that I'm waiting on? But you just have to really take a second and just, I don't want to say be cynical, but just be very careful and just take a few minutes and think about it and reach out to other people.
I would say, too, you really do, because sometimes you really, that has caught me unawares. I remember the first time that happened to me, and I had to remember that I actually hadn't ordered anything. So why are they reaching out? And when you get messages like, your account has been accepted and we can't wait to send you your product. It's like, what product? Who are you? And the first time that happened to me, I went into a panic. It's like, I've got to cancel that account, whatever it is. And I really had to stop and make myself walk it back. And it's like, this is probably a scam. But it took a few minutes.
And a term that I use when I talk to people is, I say, be paranoid. Right. Be scared. A little bit more than be a little cynical. I actually take it to the extreme a little bit, but I say be paranoid. think about what this really is. Why are they reaching out to you? Do they really need to be contacting you? Most of the time, there's a lot of different scams going on. And so just think about it before you do it. In fact, I'm probably so paranoid because of my day job and what I've seen that I had my credit card fraud alert. So I had the bank contacting me on email, phone, text message saying, hey, there's been a fraud detected on your account. Please contact us immediately. And I said, oh, no, this can't actually be my bank, even though they have most of my credit card number, my phone, my email, everything. They know my date of birth. I still didn't trust them, so I still had to call back, look on the number on the back of my card and call them directly and say, are you guys trying to, is this really legitimate? And they said, oh, yeah, we've been waiting for your call. And of course, then me being a little overly paranoid felt bad about that. But so this question actually is going to be for Kelly, to start at least, with the rest of the group jumping in as you want. But so we've talked a lot about different types of scams and how you can detect it, but ultimately people are going to make mistakes. They're going to be victims of a scam or a fraud. And so what do you recommend that people do? I know that there's some online resources. I know that the county has some resources and various different law enforcement things that you can do, but what would you say would be the best thing for people to do to get started in general? We can get into specific types of scams later.
Yeah, we can really talk about this for the whole program. It really kind of depends on what the scam was. Was it an online scam, or was it an in-person scam? Did you have a contractor come to your house and offer to fix your roof or cut down a tree for cheap materials or fix your driveway? Or was it an online scam or a text or an email? If it's one of those scams where you haven't actually met the person and they probably don't live in Montgomery County or Maryland or maybe even the United States, those scams are really better addressed by the Federal Trade Commission, and you can do that online at ftc.gov. You can also, FBI has their own special unit for types of scams. It's the Internet Crime Complaint Center, and that's ic3.gov. And I know the Attorney General's office will also look into some of those scams. I know some of you say, well, what's the point? I'm not going to get my money back. And that might be true. You probably won't get your money back in those types of scams, but it's important to share all the information, the phone numbers, the names, the specifics of the scam, and they compile all that information, and they do try to, I think, go after them in some circumstances. If you have a scam or a contractor issue, and I'm sure Eric can follow up on this, either my office or his office can investigate that. If there's actually a known person that we can arrest and convict and prosecute, then that's something that you can share with me or with Eric's office, and we can kind of just take you through case by case what's going on and kind of advise you in the best way.
And I would say one of the biggest issues with regard to financial fraud, with financial exploitation, is the fact that it's so underreported. I think the FTC maintains something called the Consumer Sentinel Playbook, which is like my personal Bible of fraud that I look for every single year. It comes out in February of every year. And, in any particular year, there are billions of dollars of funds that are stolen, but that may be 1/10 of what's really stolen. When we don't report this crime, we give the criminals a pass. We absolve them of responsibility because we're too busy being ashamed and taking responsibility on ourselves. That's not the way this should ever work. We need to shout. If we are victimized by fraud, we need to shout it from the rooftops. Tell everybody that you can, to help and maybe help them. It may not get your money back, but guess what? Sometimes the fraud that we experience is a small piece of, it could be a larger national fraud scheme that's going on, or even an international fraud scheme. So every piece of the puzzle that law enforcement can get can maybe help put those pieces together. But the other thing is that we need to say, criminals, you are responsible. You should not have done this. This was horrible. This was despicable. It's not you. It's not me. It's you. You're the ones. You're committing a crime. So as victims, we have nothing to be ashamed of. The criminals are the ones who need to be ashamed. And that's the message that we need to get out.
Keep in mind that Montgomery County is not the only source of scams. Obviously, it's all over the country. It's all over the world. And as Kelly said, it's important to get the information to federal agencies like the Federal Trade Commission and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau so that they can go after some really big scammers. But we're very fortunate and lucky in Montgomery County to have some great resources that answer the question that Keith had in terms of what we can do to try and help people. It's very rare that you can ever get the money back, but luckily in Montgomery County, we collaborate and work well together. So we have the Consumer Protection Office, and what's different about our office and what's really unique is that we do personal calls. We handle complaints one complaint at a time. The Federal Trade Commission doesn't have that luxury. They gather big portions of information and work with that. But consumers can contact our office, and we can try and resolve the complaint with them. But we also coordinate with the state's attorney's office and Kelly's office, which enforces crimes and criminal acts. So we work together very closely on that type of work. Just to give you a quick example, something that's very common is when an unlicensed home improvement contractor will come up to someone who owns a house, and the two typical things that they typically say are they have some leftover material, they were just down the block and they can fix their roof or their sidewalk or yard, things of that sort. We had a very sad case, 80-year-old gentleman who lived in his home, and a contractor came there and cut his trees, and then he said, well, when I was in that tree, I noticed that your roof has a leak. Let me go into your house and see if you need any repairs in your roof. And he went up into the attic. He had a bottle of water, just like the one you see on the table here. He sprayed the inside there, came down with some material, and said, sure enough, your roof leaks. And he was paid $10,000, and of course didn't need the work and wasn't the leak. But we were able to gather the information, work with the police department, and then transmit that information to the state's attorney's office, where Kelly and John McCarthy's team were able to bring criminal charges. In fact, if I can just bring this up, and I hate poor Kelly's going to kill me on this, but our office, we work so closely together with John McCarthy. He and I, and we typically, with Kelly, do a lot of presentations. And our office is the warm-up act, and so I would always do this, and because we work so closely together. But that's the kind of thing that we can do because we're in Montgomery County, and we have the types of resources that are here. Not every place has a Consumer Protection Office or even a Commission for Women, obviously, so we're very lucky here that we have ways of protecting consumers even after the fact.
Although I don't know what to say after the picture. I'm a little thrown here, but no. For those of us who are living in counties without an Office of Consumer Protection, I mean, Montgomery County is very lucky. Howard County is the other county that has an Office of Consumer Protection. So, yes, lucky. I happen to live in a county that does not have an Office of Consumer Protection, but wherever you live, there is AARP. And AARP has something called the Fraud Watch Network Helpline. You don't have to be a member to use it. It's completely free. And trained volunteers staff that line, actual humans, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. You can call them. You can report a scam. You can report an attempted scam. And you can ask these trained volunteers for advice about how to move forward if you have been targeted by a scam. So that's a resource. It's available for any and everybody to use anywhere in the country. The toll-free number is 1-877-908-3360, and there's a one-pager on the back table that also repeats that number.
Well, thank you. That was great information for the people here in the room and online. I wasn't even aware that there was this many resources available for people to do if they've been affected by a scam or fraud. So this is, like I said, great info. So one of the things that happened personally within my family is that about 9 months or so ago, my dad got a phone call from my daughter. It was from a Canadian number. She said, I'm stuck up here in Canada. I got mugged, and I lost my passport and lost my wallet, and could you please send money? And my dad normally would be very skeptical. He would say, "Oh, this was a scam," except it was her. It was her voice. And so what scammers are doing, and they're doing it now in a lot of businesses to CEOs and high-level executives, is they're actually using AI to train their voices. They're using information that's available on the internet to find out family members' names, where they live. So the person said, hi, Pop, I'm stuck up here, please send money. And like I said, it sounded like her. And so the only thing that prevented my dad from trying to be the great-grandfather that he is that she called him by a nickname that she wouldn't say. So he got a little skeptical and said, "Well, so how's your boyfriend John doing? Is he with you?" And her boyfriend's not John. And so the person said, "Oh, no, he's here. He also got mugged." And that's when my dad knew it was a scam. And so talk about the next generation. They had her voice. They knew that my dad was her grandfather. They knew their phone number, knew her name, obviously, and did the phone call. So, and that was 9 months ago. I can't imagine how good they're getting now with some of these scams. So I'm going to start this one off with Karen. So that's one example of what's next. What else do you think is coming that people should be concerned about as far as scams that people are going to see?
What else is coming? There's just.
I know we could go on for hours just on that one question.
I'm having a hard time imagining what couldn't be coming, because almost anything can be the subject of a scam. Any relationship, any purchase, any way in which you move in commerce can be subjected to scams. But let me walk back to the AI thing, because here's one point that I want to make about artificial intelligence. That's the biggest boogeyman out there right now. But let me tell you, we've always had this issue with verification. Long before AI, these same scammers were doing kind of bad imitations. "Well, I broke my nose, but it's me, Grandpa or Grandma or whatever." So they do that, and in a panic, especially if you get the call at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is what happened to my mother, you're not really analyzing the voice. All you know is that someone you love is in trouble and you want to, go to the rescue. So the difference between AI and before AI, to me, is not nearly as great as the lesson, which has always been the case. We have to verify what is going on. When the call comes at 3 o'clock in the morning, no matter what they say, we need to independently verify it. That was true in 1995. It was true in 2005. It is going to be true in 2025. We must verify from an independent, trusted source. There's somebody in your family. And here's something else that people can do, particularly in that situation. Families should have like a secret word or phrase that is not on social media. It should not be anywhere on social media, so please don't put it there. Don't share it. But there should be like some secret phrase or just some fact, like in in the example that we just heard, that only you all would know. And when that call comes, maybe ask that question, and when they give the wrong answer, because they're not going to know the right answer, you will know it's a scam. So that's another way to verify what you think you're hearing.
I would just like to say that your father handled that wonderfully, to ask that question. That's what we always say, to try to validate it in some other way. Ask them a question only your grandchild would know. But in the heat of the moment, that scam is especially atrocious because it pulls on your heartstrings. What grandparent wouldn't do anything for their grandchild, or a parent to their child, or a niece or nephew, whatever. So it was really great that he had the wherewithal to think about that. We also say to try to verify it with someone else, so to like try to call you on your cell phone at the same time. Be like, hey, is so-and-so in Canada? You know, she's calling me and saying that she got mugged. So that one's really tricky. It's also very reminiscent of the kidnapping scam, which kind of plays on the same premise. Yeah, really horrible. People use that scam. But yeah, he did everything great, so I just wanted to commend him for that. Yeah.
Well, he's heard my Be Paranoid speech, so.
Be scared.
And so one of the things that we're seeing here in Montgomery County specifically, as reported by employees actually, and this is recent over the past couple weeks, is a twist on the classic extortion scam. And so what attackers have been doing over the past couple of weeks is they are actually generating an email that gets sent to an individual, has their home address, says, I've been watching your online activity, I know what you're doing could be embarrassing to you, you wouldn't want your neighbors to know, and I have access to all of your computers, so I could see, you can't shut me down. Oh, by the way, here's a picture of your house. And what they're doing is these automated programs now are scraping the pictures based upon the address that's in the beginning of the email. They're scraping the Google Street View picture of the house. So people get it and they say, oh my gosh, this person's standing in front of my house right now. They must really be here, because again, it's going back to the validation point, is, having a picture of your house is some extra little step of validation, where before this was just a scam. They didn't know your address. They just sent the email off. So, and people were getting very concerned because they were fearing for their safety. They were being told that they would have to send $600+ or they would be threatened. And so people were wondering, well, should I call the police? Should I, call up like a home protection company or something like that, when in fact this is just an automated run-of-the-mill scam that's been going on for a long time. It just has a couple extra twists. So with that all being said, what should people do if they get these type of extortions? How do they know that this is just a, quote, run-of-the-mill automated type scam or something that they need to be seriously considering and contact the police or something like that?
I would always err on the side of reporting it, even if you're scared and you think it might be a scam. I say report it to the police department. We have an excellent fraud unit within the Montgomery County Police Department, but just reporting it to your local police department. I would be curious for the payment. Did they want it to be wired or gift card, or do you know how they were asking for payment?
They were actually asking for Bitcoin, like
yes.
Many of the common scams do.
Right. So that's something, always think about how are they asking for this payment. Bitcoin is really on the rise with the cryptocurrency. There's Bitcoin ATMs now. Anything with wiring or gift cards, they're basically untraceable. So that's a real red flag. If you hear any of those things as a form of payment, or they're demanding that form of payment, that is something that I would just stop and red flag, don't do it.
And the other thing that I would add to that is that we all need to understand that there is a plethora of information that is already public about each and every one of us. It is trivially easy for anybody to put together a dossier that has your name, your birth date, where you lived, what you paid for your house, when you bought your house, how much is left on the mortgage, how many children you have, where the boat is, and all that stuff. They probably know more about you than you do. So it's not that hard to do. It's not hard to send an email with somebody's address and a picture of their house. It's trivial to put that together. So if somebody reaches out of the blue to you with this information that's alarming because you think it's private, rest assured, it's not private. It never was private. So just because they have that information doesn't mean they actually know anything. And like Kelly said, is there immediacy? Are they demanding Bitcoin or gift cards or cash or wire transfer? That is a total red flag. There was a article in the Washington in a blog relating to crypto security that I read not too long ago about this group sending out these really sinister, just insidious emails saying, well, you know, I know that you watch porn, and, you know, I've seen you, I have film of you, and I will send out video of you, you know, looking at child porn to everybody in your contact list because we have it, and we have this software that will mine all of this stuff. Well, it was all a scam, and the software that they refer to couldn't do any of the things that they said it could do. So it was all complete nonsense. It was complete and utter lies. But it was so sinister, it could literally send chills up your spine. So again, are they reaching out of the blue? Does the information they have, is it publicly available? Our information's out there. We've been Equifax, we've been MPD'd, we've been so many things that the information's out there. It's not that hard for somebody to put together a file that says all kinds of things about you. That does not mean that they know anything really about you or that they can get to you. They just want to scare you into thinking that.
Well, you're hearing it directly from the experts. There's no question about it. You know, the difficulty is after listening to this presentation, you know, the rest of us are all going to want to go home, go to sleep, and never get out of bed. But that's not an option. We're going to have to live with the new normal because this is what we have to face today. The concept of privacy has changed drastically. When people who were growing up just a few years ago had a notion of privacy. But as you just heard, that notion isn't there. The personal information can be obtained so easily on any records virtually just by going on Google or wherever. It's relatively very easy. Now, you are hearing the case at the very worst. I mean, keep in mind, is the expert here who's protecting Montgomery County government from the scams that are coming at us. I mean, we have like 8,000 employees with 8,000 computers and phones and everything else. So you're hearing it at the very worst. But of course, this is what we're facing. You know, we talked about robocalls and how many we've always been complaining for the last 15 years about the robocalls that we have, and the federal government is trying to stop it, and it has not been able to do it. There's some reasons for that, and the industry has to get more involved. But these things can't be changed overnight. It is the new normal that we have. Sometimes it's very helpful to know if you want to buy a house, you want to get a picture of that house. That's great to go on, and 2 seconds later you have a picture of it. But it also can be used for terrible things like you've already heard. And with artificial intelligence, it is only going to get worse. There's no question about that, so we have to keep up with it. It's going to be more difficult to know if that's someone's real voice and things of that sort. And the government is sort of trying to figure that out as well. But again, once the genie's out of the bottle, it's never going to go back in there. And then just things with Facebook. I mean, we put our pictures on there and all these other things. I mean, it has a good side to it, so everybody can see the grandchildren, and then there's a negative side to it, and that is the world in which we now live.
And we're not even talking about deep fakes or anything like that, where nowadays, I mean, I watched a presentation earlier today where someone on a Zoom call was generating a deep fake of someone else that was on the call in real time and having them say whatever they wanted to. And it was a video of the person, it was their voice, it was, and like I said, it was happening in real time. So we would turn to the deep fake or the fake person, and they would talk and say nonsense intentionally because that's what the person was typing in, but it could have been anything. It could have been a CEO of company. It could have been Eric, you know, in a panel discussion or something like that. So, but Karen, since you touched on it, you mentioned gift card scams. So could you just inform the audience, both here and online, of what a gift card scam is? And I know that there's some new Maryland legislation out about gift card scams, so if you could also fill everyone in about that as well.
Sure. Yeah, gift cards. At AARP Maryland, we have a saying, or at AARP we have a saying, gift cards are for gifts. They're not for criminals. Anyone who is asking you to pay a debt or some sort of obligation by gift card is simply a criminal trying to scam you. No legitimate business, no legitimate government agency, no one legitimate will ever ask you to pay some sort of obligation by gift card. So if you get some sort of notification from the utility saying we're cutting off your water or your gas or your electricity unless you pay by gift card, that's a scam. Utilities don't even operate that way. And if you have someone reaching out of the blue saying, oh my goodness, there's a problem with your computer, but if you send me $300 in gift cards, I can get rid of all of those errors in your computer for you. Liar, scam, scammers, criminal, that's what this person is. So that's the thing about gift cards. We need to use them only for gifts. Now, that said, gift cards are widely available. You can get gift cards. I mean, if you go to any major department store or just any store, you'll find those kiosks in the aisles of the store with all kinds of gift cards for restaurants, all kinds of places. They're not supervised. Anybody can walk up there and grab a bunch of gift cards and tamper with them, and then they have software, these criminals have software that literally siphon out the value of that gift card within seconds. They get a ping when that number's presented, and as soon as that ping happens, they siphon the value of the gift card. So what do we do about this? Again, we get back to our superpower, which is verification. Personally, I don't buy gift cards that are just hanging on kiosk, but if you feel that you must do that, examine the gift card carefully to make sure that the tape hasn't been pulled off and just slapped back on, or that there's some little indication that someone else has been fooling around with that gift card or messing with that gift card. But better yet, look for gift cards that are behind the counter of a store where there's an employee, or even better yet, buy directly from the business that is offering the gift card. Instead of going to, for example, Home Depot to get the steakhouse gift card, get the gift card from the steakhouse. It's less likely to be tampered with there. Now, that said, Maryland has enacted legislation. It's called the Gift Card Scam Prevention Act of 2024. It was sponsored by Senator Ben Cramer from Montgomery County, and Delegate Vaughn Stewart sponsored the House version, and he's also from Montgomery County. So, but what this legislation will do, and it actually becomes effective in 2025, it requires the Office of Attorney General to establish guidelines for businesses to put up warning signs about gift card fraud at the places where people are likely to buy gift cards in the store. For resellers of gift cards, they're required to maintain records of their sales for at least 3 years and make them available to law enforcement. For brick and mortar store owners that sell gift cards, they will be required to train their employees to look for signs that someone who is purchasing, say, a large number of gift cards is doing that under duress, or looks as if they're being coerced into buying those gift cards. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that the legislation does, and this is the first of its kind in the nation, Maryland's gift card legislation requires gift card manufacturers to make their packaging more tamper resistant. That's why the legislation doesn't go into effect until next year, because these manufacturers need time to make those changes, but that's going to be a matter of law. They're going to have to make their packaging more safe so that criminals can't tamper with it as easily.
Well, let me just give you a little happy story before we all get too depressed. True story, Safeway. The cashier in Safeway was a hero, and we all need to be heroes and tell our families to do the same. There was an employee who worked in Montgomery County who was called. He moved here from another country, and the person on the other side of the phone said that the sheriff's office was coming to arrest him because he hadn't done something, paid rent or for whatever. And told him to get these cards to send money. In this case, there wasn't gift cards, but it was a green dot card or some way of you can convey money that way. And he went to Giant to get that. But here's the trick that I just want to share with you, is the person on the other end of the phone tied him up psychologically. Because, you know, some people would say, how can somebody be fooled by these things? I mean, the man didn't physically hold a gun against him. Well, in fact, that's exactly what some of these crooks can do. He says to the person on his cell phone, don't get off the cell phone. Don't tell me where you are, otherwise you're going to be arrested. So he would drive, and then the person would say, I'm driving. I'm almost at Safeway. I'm getting close to Safeway. Okay, now I'm in the, you know, there, and I'm parking, and I'm going to walk into Safeway. And so he was psychologically kept tied up, in essence, because of what this scammer was saying. Luckily, he was purchasing these green dot cards at $500 each, and the cashier, he would walk up to the cashier, and the cashier recognized what was happening. The man was sweating. He was not nervous. You could tell something wasn't right. And so the cashier, luckily, said to him, sir, you are being scammed at this moment. And, you know, basically brought him down from his scaredness and whatever. And he did lose that one card, but we weren't able to help him get any more back. But these are the kinds of things that we have to be aware of and share that kind of information with everyone else. Because, again, this technology is helpful, but it also can damage us. You know, keep in mind, we are all just one click away from financial harm. We are all one click away from financial harm. There's no question about it. All of us, including me, we've been on the computer, and next thing you know, why did I do it? As soon as you clicked it, well, that's because it was late in the evening, and you've been up all night clicking on the computer, and it's just before midnight, you're ready to go to bed, and next thing you know, you had 1 second of weakness and clicked. So we just now have to be careful about all of that.
I'd like to add something to that too, Eric. It's just, we have to understand that these criminals weaponize our emotions. That's what they do. That's why it doesn't matter how smart you are. So this notion that only dummies fall for these scams needs to go the way of the dodo bird. There's no such, it has nothing to do with how smart, I don't care how many degrees you have after your name. I don't care if you haven't gone through grammar school. I don't care if you're a cyber expert. I'm not looking at Keith.
I saw that.
It can happen because if you're human, you have emotions, and that's the connection. That's what these criminals do. They literally think 24/7 about how to manipulate you emotionally. At ARP, we call it getting the target under the ether. You are in such a heightened emotional state, either from happiness or from panic or fear or deep sadness or whatever the catalyst is, but it's a heightened emotional state. And we are just physiologically incapable of analyzing a situation very well when our emotions are at full tilt. That's just the human condition. And scammers know this, and that's what they use against us. That's why for us, besides verification, our other superpower is time. That's why it's so important to do nothing immediately, but to step back. No matter what they're telling you, just step back for a couple of minutes, ask somebody, or run it through your mind in away from the fever of the situation. And you may realize that this doesn't make sense. I know for me, and I'll use myself as an example, there was one time I was distracted, I was on the computer, was doing a bunch of things, and somebody came to my door offering me a third-party energy thing, the opportunity to use third-party energy. And they said all of these great code words like, well, coal is bad, and and you could strike a blow to help climate change. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's great. I should do that. And so I was literally about to do that. And for some reason, I walked back to the kitchen, and on the walk back to the kitchen, I started thinking, I don't want to do this. I'll go online, maybe I'll look into it, but I'm not going to do this right now. Yikes. And I walked back and said, I'm not going to do that. But it literally took that 30 seconds of walking back to the kitchen to get out of the spell, because I was definitely picking up what they were laying down. They were, there were these young ladies. They were so nice and so polite, and I just thought, oh, of course I'll do what you want. And I had to walk away to realize I don't want to do what they want at all. So yeah, it can happen to anyone.
Well, so I just want to remind people, if you're online, please go to Facebook live stream and submit your questions there. Also, if you're in the room, we'll alternate between room questions and some of the ones I have here. So if you are interested in the room of asking a question, please raise your hand, and I'll go back and forth between the online and the room. First, I do want to answer an online question, because this is actually a very good question, and it's in my field of expertise. So the question is as a general rule of thumb, how often should people typically change their passwords? And my recommendation is never, because of one simple thing. What I do is I have a completely separate password for my bank. I have a completely separate password for my email. I have and I look at the importance of the accounts. As if someone got into my bank account and started sending money off, I want to make sure that password's never shared with anything else, that it's not anything that anyone could guess, and it's just for my bank. Same thing with my email. If they got into my email or got into my cell phone, they could do a lot of things like getting my two-factor auth. So I keep those passwords. Again, I don't change them because I want to remember them every time. I don't want to have to go through a password reset procedure, but I also, and they're very strong, they're very complex, but again, they're not shared. And that's the most important thing that I would say regarding passwords, is make sure that for your important accounts that the passwords aren't shared, because that's what hackers are doing, is they're not guessing your passwords anymore. It's too difficult now. 8, 10, 12 characters, a lot of the places will lock you out. But what they are doing is they're using other breaches of other accounts elsewhere, getting those passwords and trying them on your account. And I have to admit, even as a cybersecurity professional, I got hit a couple months ago with this exact attack. Because what I had is I had my airline. I figured, oh, they can't do anything on my airline, so I'm going to use this as a shared password that I can more easily remember with a couple other accounts with that password. One of those other accounts were breached. They went into my airline account, and they drained all of my airline miles. They bought tickets within 3 days, and all my airline miles were gone. So as everyone said before, it can happen to the best of us. Yes, it can. So even if you do have the protections in place, and now, my airline account is completely separate. Anything that with a credit card, anything with a value to an attacker now has a completely separate password for that reason. And so, like I said, that's more important than having a password that you change often. Because if you change passwords often, you tend to reuse the same password across a bunch of sites, and that's where the hackers get you. And so, yes, we had a couple questions in the room.
Hi. So one of the things I just want to give a tip is that confidence matters, because if someone calls me, I ask questions. I tell them you're lying, and I'm calling the police, and I'm going to record it. And so what else you want to know? And then I start asking them questions. Because a lot of times if we don't share this information, it continues to spiral in the community. And so what are your recommendations to help people understand that if you don't know someone on the street, they shouldn't be asking you questions. Where do you live? Where do you work? Where do you go to school? And if you have confidence, you can deter them, to say, I'm not giving you my information. You're a weirdo. Get out of here. But to confront it, because a lot of times the extortion, it happens in real life. I know where you live. I tell people, come to my house if you want to. Police be waiting on you, and the sheriff. But that's the point of it, is to let people know that you will share this information. So that kind of gets them feeling a certain kind of way, and they kind of think twice, hopefully, that you can't just prey upon people. There's going to be somebody like me or a lot of people in the community that's going to say, no, I'm going to catch you and I'm going to stop you, And so what are your recommendations to help people not feel victimized, not feel ashamed, as you all mentioned, to say, hey, it's happens to people all the time, you know, but if you don't talk about it or let the right people know, it's going to continue to happen.
Actually, that's exactly why I just told the story that I did. So I've been studying cybersecurity since I was probably about 10 years old. And you make mistakes. The difference is that you can minimize the damage as to as little as possible. You know, I had, again, a shared password between a small handful of accounts, and that's how they got into my airline miles and siphoned out all my airline miles. But I quickly recognized it, quickly did something about it, and called back the airlines and said, hey, you know, you need to refund me for this, because this particular airline didn't have two-factor auth, which is a common way to protect against, you know, the traditional type of password attack. And so I said, hey, if you guys had a way for me to better secure my account, I would have done it, but you didn't have it. So they sheepishly gave me back my miles and told me, yeah, we'll do this one time, but if you're an idiot again, no, we're not going to refund your miles again. But getting back also to the question about if someone comes up to you on the street, a lot of people get scared or nervous. They don't want to be confrontational, or they don't know this person. They don't know how this person's going to act. And what I would say is give them junk information. Say that you're going to, Bill and Ted's Excellent University, and you drive a 1993 Ford Focus or something like that. Just make up information so they take that information. They think you're telling them the truth, but in fact, it doesn't give them any intelligence. And like I said, it can be seen as less confrontational.
One thing that I would say about that too, one of my pet peeves, and this has to do with banks, is that they use security questions. I hate security questions. They're insecure questions as far as I'm concerned. But here's my advice. Don't tell the truth. What's your child's first name? Well, I've made up lots of names. Toyota, for example. Who was your first boss? Scandinavia. I don't know, whatever. Just make something completely nonsensical. Now, when you say that stuff, you might want to keep track of what it is you're saying, but and there's no problem with that. Just, write it down. I mean, I have a list of my answers to security questions that have absolutely nothing to do with my truth at all. Just wild things. But I write them all down so that if I have to use that security question, if I have to answer the security question, I know. Where did you get married? It was Antarctica. Okay, that really didn't happen, but they don't need to know that. So that's the other thing that you can do, is just to lie to the liars.
Just to add to that, just very quickly, we tell people the password, you should treat our passwords like toothbrushes. You don't share them. We have to worry about cyber hygiene. We've learned how to lock our car doors. We've learned how to lock our house doors, and now we have to learn how to lock our digital doors.
And so cyber hygiene is actually a great segue into an online question that just came in. And so the person asked if someone's computer is up to date with the latest patches, the latest updates. And I'll take this question again, because this is definitely up my alley. Is antivirus software even truly needed to prevent malware? And how does malware get onto a computer if it's completely up to date? And really, the answer to that question is yes, antivirus is still needed for two reasons. The first is that even if you keep your computer up to date on everything, which is not a simple task for the average non-IT cybersecurity expert that's been doing this since he was 10, but it's not an easy task, but also the malware could get onto your machine through what's called 0 days. So basically that there's not a software update available for a security hole. And so the malware gets onto your computer, even though you do everything you can to keep it up to date. The other way it still gets onto your computer is through, and I'll go back to the panel on discussing this topic is through the classic tech support scams. And so the tech support scam says, oh, you need to get this update, or this bad thing is on your computer, download this program and we'll fix it all for you. And so what people do is, without antivirus scanners, they'll download something that they think that they need to do right now and install it. And even though their software is completely up to date, they themselves are putting malicious software onto their computer. So yes, the short answer is yes, you should have a reputable antivirus product. There's lots of reviews out there for what's reputable. Again, don't just pick one off the internet, off the first results in Google, because that's typically nowadays fraudulent software anyway. But getting back to the tech support scam, what is it? And it's actually one of the most common things that we see here that people question, because they see a big red banner that comes up and says, oh, your computer has been taken over by hackers, you need to do X, Y, and Z. So how do people detect it? What should they do about it, et cetera?
Well, what we always tell folks is that if you do have an antivirus software like Norton or McAfee or what have you, is to call them directly. Don't click on the link. Don't call that 800 number that's blasting on your screen. And we also tell people just to completely shut down your computer. And when you reboot it, sometimes it'll say, do you want to restart your last session or restore it? And we say to not do that. You might have a more up-to-date answer. I'm not sure. That's what we've always told people, to not click on the link, not call the number, but just go directly to your software provider or your antivirus provider.
And the other thing I would say is that this gets back to this, somebody reaching from out of the blue to helpfully tell you about a problem. And let me just say for the record, trillion-dollar corporations don't give a crap about whether your computer works or not. They don't. Apple will never call you to inform you that your computer's not working, because they don't care. And neither does Google, and neither does Microsoft. So when somebody says that, and some of these criminals that are doing this actually do work for tech companies. I mean, there have been reports of some of these criminals, their day jobs are doing tech support for Microsoft. And then in the evening, their side hustle is to steal money from people by pretending to be tech support. So anyone who reaches from out of the blue, calls you, and this happened again to a person in my family. There's something wrong with your iPad. No, there wasn't. All those red boxes, those red X's mean that there's something terribly wrong. No, wrong, but just send me $300 and I'll fix it. And fortunately, my family member was stopped by another family member who said, don't do that. That doesn't sound right. So, yeah, anyone calling you or emailing you about a problem with your computer is lying, period, full stop. And you can independently check if you're really concerned. You can independently check your own computer to see if something's working or if everything's working or not. But if somebody's reaching from out of the blue to tell you that, they're just lying. They're criminals, and they're scamming you.
Just very quickly, it's talking about the convenience of Google and finding reputable merchants, whether it's for tech support or anything. Just the advice that we say to people, at least in Montgomery County, is Checkbook Magazine is a nonprofit organization that's been around for over 40 years. It is the single best source of information in terms of choosing any kind of merchant, any kind of business that you're looking for. Again, it's unlike all the other ones that are out there. I don't think they'll probably have one for tech support. But when it comes, it's called Checkbook Magazine. And you can become a member. There's some fees, but you can also get it at the library for free. And it is a single best source if you're looking for any type of merchant. These are the sorts of things. It's probably not advisable just to go onto Google and click on and hire the first name that pops up. I mean, that's just not the way to really find anybody. The best way you can.
Yes, we have a question in the room, and I'll repeat it for the people online. So the question was, and I'm going to over-summarize it or oversimplify it a little bit, but the question is that some citizens received confirmation from their bank that there was some money transferred while they were trying to work with the bank on checking all of this. The hackers stole money out of their bank account. So what should people do when working with their banks to ensure that they don't lose their money? I'm sure I cut out a lot of important details, but at least that's the gist of the question.
I think it's what we've been trying to drive home this whole time, is that when you get something like that, always question it. Is it really from my bank? Is it or a bad actor? And call your bank directly. Be like, I got this message saying that my account's been compromised. Can you tell me if that's really the case? Not to click on anything that's in the messages that unfortunately they received.
We would just say, never do anything if you did not initiate the call. Doesn't matter who it is. If something's calling you, if you want to speak to this person, you say, I'll get back to you. And then check to make sure that you are initiating the call and that it's a valid number. Otherwise, you have no real way of knowing for sure who is on the other end of that computer or phone.
The other thing that I would say, too, is that I think what the person who asked the question is getting to is this war that is going on right now between what is fraud and what is deception. And frankly, I mean, we have federal laws that protect all of us from being defrauded, but it means that, like, the bank system itself was compromised through no fault of your own, because the bank systems weren't safe, or something like that. But if you were deceived, that many banks act as if that is a gray area, even though the impact is just as visceral as if somebody had taken a gun and held you up. They're saying, banks may be more likely to say, well, we were not involved in that. Our systems were safe. You gave permission, and even though you were tricked, many layers of trickery into giving that permission, it's not our responsibility. And we're fighting that battle now. I mean, there are federal regulations that require refunds of, like, if your debit card has been compromised or your credit card has been compromised, federal law requires banks to refund that money if you did not give permission, but if they think you have, that's the gray area. So that's why it is so hard, that it's been very hard to get money back, and why there's just been this, like, sort of really like capricious sort of way. Sometimes people get money back because they talk to a news station or television, or they get it publicized in the newspaper, and then the bank decides to make an exception, much like in Keith's case with the airline miles. So they decide to make that one exception, but it's not necessarily a policy. So we're fighting that battle.
And so your discussion is actually a great segue into an online question that we have. So I know earlier in the talk we talked about what do people do if they have been a victim of a scam. And the person online said that their bank account was compromised, a bunch of money was stolen, and they contacted the FTC and FBI, and no one did anything. So what would you say that people could do to take it to the next step, if anything, after they've been a victim of a scam?
I'm not sure if they directly report it to their bank, like file a fraud affidavit. That's usually like the first line of defense if their account was actually fraudulently accessed.
The question didn't say. It just says that they reported it to the FBI, FTC, Consumer Financial Board, et cetera.
I mean, it sounds like they did everything that I would have suggested. If it was truly compromised, I would call M&T or Wells Fargo and fill out the paperwork and say, I didn't authorize any of this. All of these transactions are fraudulent, and usually it's assigned to the fraud department, and you have an investigator, and they can work on that with you that way. Also, filing a police report and getting that police report number can help if you can provide that to the bank and let them know. Then it sometimes will escalate that situation.
And obviously contact the Office of Consumer Protection as well. And, make as much noise that you can, because even if you can't directly be helped, you reporting it as much as you can to every sort of law enforcement agency and every sort of protection board will definitely help others as well.
And I would say reporting it to the police is really important. I mean, they're not going to stop by or, dust for fingerprints or anything, but you need that case file number, because sometimes the bank will not even initiate an investigation unless they have a case file number from the police. And if insurance is involved, they may not do anything in terms of initiating some sort of refund, say if it involved an annuity or something, unless you have a case file number from a police report. So reporting that is really important.
Can I say something really quick? I just reminded myself, always get your free credit report every year from the 3 reporting agencies, TransUnion, Experian, and
Equifax.
Thank you, I always forget one. And what I like to do is kind of stagger them throughout the year. Don't get all 3 at once, but get one in January, one in the summer, and one in the winter, because something might happen throughout the year that you weren't aware of. So it's free, definitely do that. And you can also, an option, if you're ever compromised, you can always freeze your credit for a certain amount of time, and just to make sure it doesn't snowball if you are compromised in any way, and then you can always take the freeze off.
And actually, I will just amend what Kelly said, just to say that with regard to free credit reports, you can actually get one every week now. They changed the 3 credit reporting agencies, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, have changed their policy, so now you can get a free credit report from each of those agencies every week if you want to, from annualcreditreport.com. That is the legitimate source, so don't go to other sources because there may be hidden charges or something like that. But you can do that, and I would definitely echo freezing your credit. When we all got Equifaxed in 2017, and yes, that's what I call it, I froze my credit at the 3 credit reporting agencies, and it was not fun, but I'm really glad I did it. And once you do it, you don't have to keep doing it. The freeze stays on until you take it off. It's completely free. Don't get diverted by credit locks or credit secure or any of those cute little names that the credit reporting agencies have for their products where they charge you. A credit freeze is completely free. You can lift and replace the freeze as many times as you want until the cows come home. It is totally free, and that's what you should do.
Okay, we're down to our last couple of minutes and last couple of questions. So again, I'll take a question from the room and a question from online. Yes. Great question. So the question was, what do you do if you've been notified that your information's on the dark web? It is. I'm sorry. All of our information is in multiple different copies in multiple different locations. You have to assume always that your Social Security number's out there. You always have to assume that many of your passwords from compromised sites are out there. Again, that goes back to my whole, keep different passwords for different purposes. And there's no way you can claw back that information from the dark web. So it just goes back to the whole, think about how you containerize what you're doing and how you make the assumption, as Eric said probably about 30 minutes ago, that all this information that you think is private really isn't anymore. And it's available somewhere, somehow. So try to contain the damage, again, given that assumption, and be paranoid.
I was just going to say, we have a hard enough time taking care of our own world. Now we have a dark web and a dark world. It's unbelievable what goes on there, and that we have no knowledge of. It's just a whole nother world or whatever. But with identity theft or those types of problems, it's really not going to be a matter of if it will happen. It's really just going to be when it will happen to all of us at some point. There's going to be some type of like that, and we just have to be aware of it.
And so a couple last questions. The first online, does a VPN provide the same type of security as antivirus? And again, if that's okay, I'll take this one. So VPN and antivirus are two completely different types of tools. VPN, for those that don't know, stands for Virtual Private Network, and it basically comes in two flavors. The first is either it's your company that you work for, it's allowing you to get access into their systems and their networks, which basically is completely different than antivirus. Like I said, it allows you to do your job when you're not within the company walls traditionally. The other type of VPN is a consumer-grade VPN, and that just provides a little bit of anonymity while you work online. But again, that's completely different than antivirus. I would still recommend, again, a good, reputable antivirus product on top of VPN or any other security tools that you use. One question in the room? Yep.
I run a small nonprofit law firm, and every single day we receive phishing emails, hundreds. I just deleted almost 200 of them. Changed our credit cards twice in the last year. It's constant, absolutely constant. And I'm just puzzled at how you can maintain any sort of security. Today alone, we had an attempt a phishing attempt for us to give out information about a new bank account for an employee. Totally fake thing for the next payroll check. And yeah, it just makes me crazy. And these things work. The other thing that happened today, just today, was a false transaction on our credit card to a local DV group, a sexual assault group. We asked them, is this us? No. How do you protect against these things?
So the question is this individual runs a small local nonprofit, and she's constantly dealing with scams. She said a couple hundred a day. I wish that was our problem. I mean, we're dealing with thousands and thousands, and if not, so for us, my team analyzes about 80 million events a day. So a couple hundred, I think, would be fantastic. I would love it. And that's every day, 7 days a week. We just are dealing with a deluge of scams constantly happening. Every organization is, no matter what size, no matter if it's an individual or a company. That's how we started this whole conversation. It's a constant, ongoing thing. And the reason why you see so many is that they only have to be successful a handful of times. In fact, I spoke to a tech support scammer one day. So actually went through and called me up and did the whole, your computer's infected, and I knew the whole scam, so I went along with it for about 10 minutes, and then eventually said, hey, look, I'm in the industry, I know what's going to happen. You're going to tell me this, I'm going to do this. You're going to tell me this, I'm going to do this. We're going to go back and forth. You're going to get access to my computer. You're going to tell me I need this antivirus, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I got to ask. I said, there's no way I can do anything with this information, but why do you do this? I said, I can't do anything. I can't prosecute you. I don't know who you are. But as someone else in the industry that's constantly fighting against this, why do you do it? And what do you gain from it? And so what he told me is that he said that he gets, so basically at the end of this whole thing, after they scam it, you give them a credit card number, they charge it $150. He said he makes usually between $75 and $100 every single time that happens. The rest of the money goes to the call center that he works at. And he brings in usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 a day. No, 25 victims a day. So times 100 per, you can figure that they're making a couple $1,000s a day overseas. So that answers why they do it. They do hundreds of calls a day, hundreds and hundreds of calls. They get 25 of them that they fall victim to the scam, and at 100 per, or costs the victim 150. He makes 100, and it's worthwhile for them. So that's why we see all this stuff. Is like I said, the hit rate's relatively low, but for them, they're making a pretty good living at it, and it's tough to argue. I mean, it's a malicious activity. Let me not discount that, but for them, they're making good money at it.
One other thing that you can do to protect yourself, I think, is rely on your credit card. I mean, that may be hard to wrap your mind around, but to me, I don't use my debit card for anything because it's my money. And if that debit card number gets compromised, that's coming out of my checking account. If my credit card number gets compromised, that's not my money. That's the credit card company's money, and they have vast resources that they will employ to get their money back. So I use my credit card for any purchase. I don't care how big or small it is. I use that as my financial shield. And there have been times when it's been compromised, and I get a new card and I move on, but I don't worry about my bank account being compromised, because that's not what's at issue. It's the credit card. So it's just something to think about.
Thank you so much for those nuggets of information. On behalf of the commission, I have to say this was a fabulous program. Let's give them a round of applause. It was a fabulous program. Fabulous program. Keith, Kelly, Karen, and Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, to impart that knowledge with us today. I think if we did not learn anything else, one of the things that we need to remember, do not trust and verify. And so I think that probably sums up this evening. So I want to thank you for that. Your information, not only was it knowledgeable, but it was easily understood so that we may take that information and continue navigating through our lives. So thank you so much. Thank you. I also would like to thank our community partners and sponsorships for working together and giving your time and attention and making this a reality. I have a special thank you for the Montgomery County Office of the Commission for Women for your continual support in making this a reality. And for you, the audience, those of you that are here tonight and those of you that are online, thank you for taking time for this nugget of knowledge. I also am going to impart with you a charge. Now that you have the knowledge, I charge you to share that with someone else. Share that with one other person and ask them to pay it forward and share that information. The more information we share, the more we arm ourselves with information that will help us, the more we can cut down some of the things that we are seeing. So I charge you with that tonight. So everyone, thank you so much. I was certainly enlightened, I know, as all of you. So I thank all of you and have a good night.